Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It opens on a deadite roaming the streets at night, cloaked as no one notices them. It's the same one that escaped in Evil Dead, and it comes to a locked door. It walks around and climbs rather easily to an unlocked window. They climb in and begin looking for something amongst the scientific equipment. They find a file, and before they can pick it up, they are smashed over the head with a chair. They are then thrown around the room, and the vial is wrestled out of their hand before they are lifted to the window with one hand and thrown out of it. The deadite falls on the camera, and the title flashes. The duo of Frankenstein and Ash arrive via plane in England. Frank is still semi-hidden. They discuss the details of the file, trying to remember everything. They get out to a car that is waiting for them. They arrive at the European branch of the Holy Cadre, where they are given more background on the case. Nothing. They receive the address and take a car out to the place. They pull up to the same house as from the opening. They knock on the door, which is answered by the butler. They are at first turned away, but they mention the agency and are ushered in. They are shown to the main living room. The whole house is dusty, but in a neat way. They are left in the room on a dusty couch. We follow the butler to a room where he unlocks and hesitantly opens. We see a room that has been torn apart, and the butler opens the door, flooding light into the darkened space. From the butler's perspective, the light hits a man hunched over scientific equipment on the floor. He tells him he said to leave him alone, to which the butler replies that the agency is there. At this, the man straightens up and pulls his hair back, tying it up. He stands and fixes himself up some more before leaving the room, asking the butler to have the window fixed. We see the room from outside the shattered window. Back to Frank and Ash in the room. They are sitting awkwardly, waiting for the doctor, who is walking down the stairs hurriedly, still fixing himself up. He begins speaking, but is taken aback by who is in front of him. Through the next conversation, they discuss who they are and what the exact purpose of Jekyll's experiments are. To isolate evil from the human and destroy it, making the human a truly good creature. While the goal of the agency is to control any physical beings of evil, I am more interested in saving man from the unforeseen evils of himself. The doctor explains what he has done and where he is. He has a serum that isolates evil, but he just needs one to destroy it. He seems to become more and more impatient, wanting to get back to his work. After they leave, they are seen heading in a car back to the European branch's HQ. The doctor watches them leave before flipping out and throwing things against the wall. I need more time, damn it! Cut to that night, the butler is seen locking up. However, he forgets to lock the door to the doctor's room, and it is seen slightly ajar. When the butler walks into his own room down the hall, we see the door start to slowly swing open. Cut to Ash who is out for a stroll, surveying the area around the doctor's place for any strange occurrences, as they don't fully trust him. And Frank also has a feeling he may be getting influence from the Necronomicon. He sits at a park bench and is soon joined by a shadowy figure, who asks rather roughly what he is doing. Ash looks over, but the man's face is shadowed over. He says he hopes Ash wasn't disturbing the good doctor's work, which Ash responds with he doesn't know what he was talking about. The man's threatened Ash, saying he knows he's lying, and if he ever caught him out here again, he would be dead, smashing his foot with a cane as he walks down the street, kicking it as well. The next day is slow, as Ash now has a broken foot. The agency does the best they can to do a search for the man Ash could describe to the best of his ability, but no man comes up. That night, Frankenstein goes on watch. This time, he sees someone crawling across the rooftops towards the house. They crawl into the window and out again, this time onto the ground. They hastily walk away. Frank follows and corners the man in an alley. He demands to know what he was doing in the house. The man turns to Frank, revealing to be the Deadite from before. We get a fight between Frank and Ash. Nope, Frank and Deadite. Frank versus Deadite. And Frank wins and takes back a vial before the Deadite runs away with that super speed. He hears a scream that gets cut off and rushes to see what it is. He turns the corner of another alley to a dead woman. Her throat has been crushed with considerable force. A shadowy figure speeds away around the corner. There's nothing else to be done, and Frank leaves the scene as sirens begin to be heard. Back at HQ, he asks for a small sample to be tested for what it's made of. He then goes to return the rest to the doctor. Upon arriving at the doctor's place, there is a crime scene in an alley adjacent to the doctor's house. Frank goes up to the door and knocks. There is the muffled voice of the doctor through the door, saying they don't want anything to do with the crime, and they know nothing. Frank says who he is, and the door cracks open. The doctor is panicked and super jittery, and looks on the brink of death. The doctor ushers him in and slams the door, locking multiple bolts on it. He explains that there was a break-in last night and he lost all of his work. He is distressed and growing more aggravated. Frank tells him he saw it and hunted the man down. He produces the vial and the doctor snatches it from him. He thanks Frank and then orders him to leave. On the way out, he intercepts the butler, who is carrying 2 parcels. He apologizes and walks past. Frank stops him for a minute and asks what he knows about the doctor's research. At this, the butler asks him to wait a moment and goes inside to deliver the parcels. He comes back out and asks Frank to take a walk with him. While they walk, Frank learns of the horror the doctor is dealing with every night, about his partner who constantly causes a ruckus in the room, causing the doctor to lose work and time, and what it was he was delivering to the doctor. Frank recognizes some of the materials as needed for something from the Necronomicon. He asks if it's alright to see the doctor's lab, to which the doctor immediately replies he is not to let anyone in there. That night, Frank goes to investigate the doctor's lab secretly. He climbs up a ladder to the window and finds it unlocked. He slips his head in and finds no one there. He steps inside and begins quietly rummaging through notes. He comes across the doctor's journal and begins flipping through until he hears a noise outside. He hides under a bed and waits. All he sees is a pair of feet come in through the window and into the room. They start scuffling around and ruffling through papers. When they can't find what they're looking for, the distorted voice of the doctor begins cursing and objects are thrown and tables overturned. Then someone else comes in through the window, and in his fury, Hyde chases them out via the window. Frank takes this opportunity to follow, leaving the journal. He bumps into Ash, who can now walk again, but barely. They hear what sounds like a quarrel with breaking glass and shouts. They come to a short, horrific-looking Mr. Hyde, beating the hell out of a man who is already bruised and bloodied. Frank tears Hyde off and restrains him with some difficulty. Hyde continuously struggles, saying the man stole his property, his notes. To which Frank responds he had them and was just checking up on the doctor's findings. Hyde becomes more infuriated, writhing and wriggling. When asked where the doctor is, he responds rather cryptically before transforming back into Jekyll. Jekyll, of course, is confused and asks what happened, staring at the dead man before him. When told what happened, he breaks down before asking what happened to his notes. They rush back to the house and enter through the door to find the Deadite standing with the vial and notes in hand. Before they can react, the Deadite painfully sprouts wings and zooms out of the window. The next day at HQ, we learn that the murders are inconclusive, as no evidence matches any known person. A monster was supposedly seen flying over the London sky, and a local doctor, Henry Jekyll, has mysteriously vanished. Frank and Ash have a moment's rest to consider their current place and everything. We learn that Jekyll is fine at a phone booth as he makes a call to Dr. Loomis, saying he was grateful for his contributions, but unfortunately the experiment had failed, and his patient is hopeless. Loomis lets out a disgruntled sigh as he hangs up, stands and walks out the door with his name on it.